I would like to introduce today the panelists. We are excited today to talk about business statistics, the course and changes, and incorporating analytics across the business curriculum. Today we have John Branner from Cape Fear Community College, Janet Frazier from West Virginia University, and she's also adjuncting at another school, and we'll be talking about that as well. Patrick Dulcio from Miami-Dade College, and hopefully Patrick was able to get on. He was having some trouble with WebEx, so hopefully we'll see Patrick soon. Vic Matta from Ohio University, and then Katie Terrell from the University of Arkansas. So I am going to switch to the next slide, and we're going to talk through a series of questions. Look at me, I'm right on schedule in like 10 minutes. We're going to talk through a series of questions that we'll bring up, and let me just make sure everyone is off of mute. Actually, you can, oh, Patrick, excellent, you made it. Excellent. I'm so glad to hear you here, that you're here. So what I'm going to do is, as we go through these questions, we'll have everybody sort of answer each one as they come up onto the screen and talk about how your particular school, how you handle this question. And maybe everyone can stay on mute, and then when it's your time to talk, we'll have you answer your question. So first question, so tell us about your business statistics and analytics programs at your particular school. All right, so the first question is, how is your institution currently integrating or planning to integrate analytics across the business curriculum? And some things to think about: does your institution offer a major, a minor? How is this decided? What types of different analytics courses are being offered? John, why don't we start with you, since you're first on the slide, if you'd like to sort of talk through the way that you're integrating.
Sure. Well, Cape Fear Community College is in North Carolina. I think we got that question the last time somebody asked where we were, but it's in Wilmington, North Carolina. And the way we integrate business analytics is we have the primary program itself is the program that I oversee, and then we have separate certificates that have business analytics add on to, like, for example, we might have accounting with a certificate in business analytics. So we integrate those courses into the accounting department, the accounting program, so that students get a boost, and it kind of helps promote and bring up our enrollment. But that's kind of the way we're doing it. A primary program for an Associate of Applied Science, and then we have a diploma and a certificate. So the certificates are not just in business analytics, but we have other programs that integrate the certificate into their program as well.
Wonderful, thank you. Patrick, what about you? How are you integrating analytics or not in your program?
First, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to have this discussion. At Miami-Dade, we're trying to develop a major in business analytics. There are not too many colleges with a business analytics major. It's relatively a new field. But some of the key pushbacks or key aspects of it is the, I guess, the incorporation of our computer sciences, our engineering group, and trying to just pick their brains and making sure that we have a comprehensive program. Currently, we're in the stages of ironing out what needs to be in the program, and then developing a course pathway so that once we bring out the program, students have a path to success within the program.
Wonderful. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
How about you, Janet? And I know you were going to talk about both of your schools.
Yeah, so I primarily teach at West Virginia University, where I am the coordinator of all of the business data analytics programs. I also am an adjunct instructor at Chatham University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I teach some of the introductory courses as well as business research methods. To start with WVU, we have a minor in business data analytics, and we chose to go the minor route because we felt that all of the majors within the College of Business could really benefit from having a business data analytics component within it. So we developed a minor that has 3 core courses, one of which is a fundamental overview of what business data analytics is. It's a bit of a statistics refresher. It's where students first learn how to use R. We teach R while we're also teaching or refreshing them in statistical methods as well as data analytics methods, finding fairly good luck with that approach because the students seem to have an easier time digesting it when they see the application for learning the code. And then we also require them to take a operational decision analytics course that is still primarily Excel based, but we're moving more into using tools like R in that class, as well as a course in AI and collecting business intelligence. And then they can choose an array of electives. They can choose 2 from a list of electives that we have, some that are very specific to data analytics and are housed within the data analytics department, things like simulation or advanced analysis methods, but we've also worked with other departments like economics to ensure their class in econometrics, for example, is a good fit. We also have some MIS classes that students can take in the minor. For example, database management, which in data analytics, it's pretty important to know where you put your data and how you manage your data to successfully work with it. And then we also have a Master of Science degree in business data analytics. It's been growing. It's basically been doubling in size every year since I took over as coordinator. And we're now at the point where I don't think we can grow anymore unless I can get 4 more faculty. But that's really more of a discussion for me in the dean's office. So we can see a lot of demand. Our master's program is soup to nuts. You can take it even if you have very little background in data analytics. We generally look for some background in math and or coding. We find that having at least one of those skills is a good predictor of success in the program. It attracts everything from recent graduates to, we've had senior vice presidents of local businesses and banks in the program. It's online, so we've had students from as far away as Guam and Germany participate in our program. And it starts slowly with an introduction to databases, basic data analytics methods, and business intelligence. And then we move into things like simulation, machine learning, operational decision making. And then finally, they finish it off with a data visualization course and a capstone course where they do a project for an actual company that has actually made a donation to the university to have our students work on their projects. So that's the WVU side of things. And then at Chatham is a liberal arts university in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They've got an enrollment of about 2,500 students, so a lot different than my ginormous land-grant university in Morgantown, West Virginia. And they have established a applied data science major, and it was designed with 2 really outstanding experts from Carnegie Mellon. So initially it was extremely math heavy. It was probably the most rigorous data science major I have seen. Now, with a couple years under their belt, we're reestablishing and trying to realign it more to support business needs. So some of the math is being relaxed in place of more applied business problem solving type data analytics classes. But these students are coming out of this program extremely prepared mathematically with a broad range of data analytics classes. They can all code proficiently in both Python and R. I teach their Python class, in fact. And they're also, as a requirement before graduation, they have to complete a capstone project with a business or organization outside of the university using data science. And there's also considerable overlap between their MIS program and a program that is called Immersive Media, which is another major that is probably emerging that I'd never heard of, which is focused on game design, but a step further into experiences where individuals are deeply involved and immersed in their media. So both schools have taken very different approaches, but they suit the institutions really well. And I think it illustrates what you're going to hear from everyone that's spoken so far, as well as myself and Vic and Katie, that every university and every college has different needs in this area, but I think ultimately the students win because they have choice.
Thank you so much, Janet. Vic, would you like to, I ended up putting all of the questions up because a lot of a lot of what Janet was talking about, I think, are some of the other later questions as well. Did you want to talk about just the first question, or did you want to choose any of these to talk through?
I'll quickly address just the first question for now, so that we are, as we
Okay.
are running round through those, I can specifically answer the others. And briefly, I'm not going to repeat a lot of what Janet said, but we've got a couple of parallels at Ohio University with the programs that are running in West Virginia University in terms of the fact that we are offering business analytics as a minor for similar reasons. We believe that they would work well with the other business majors. And the second parallel is we also are running an online master's program in business analytics. And so those parallels exist. They're doing fine. Again, the enrollment there as well has been increasing tremendously. So we've got that parallel as well. It's a minor. It was decided based on the ability to allow other people outside our college to take this as well. The different types of courses that are offered in the minor are descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive analytics, which is almost a sequential track that students take through this minor. Along with that, they've got two courses that are database oriented. So one is more data and free-form data and doing predictive analytics, and the other one is database oriented, so business intelligence and using SQL servers and so on. And so these two courses then basically follow NoSQL. They begin originally, of course, with the standard normalization, standard database format. So we get two courses in the business intelligence space. And the final course there in that 6-course minor is a capstone course that allows them to specialize in an area of their choice. It may be accounting, it may be marketing, and so on. A lot of students come from marketing, so they choose marketplace analytics as their capstone. So essentially, that's the makeup of our program. Before they get into this minor, they are given a taste of analytics in the business core, with using two courses that get them acquainted with Excel, which is used for quite a few of those courses. So we've got these two ramp-up courses. The second of these focuses a little bit more on statistics because it's a tag course and it needs to be kind of convertible or transferable between different different universities. So it's actually one of those courses that have been identified as needing to adhere to a certain set of concepts that need to be transferable between courses. So that allows some statistical concepts to come in, and those two are business core courses, and they do a very good job of introducing the student to what analytics would be as a minor.
Fantastic. Thank you, Vic. And now we're going to move on to Katie Terrell.
Yes, hi.
Hi,
So I will
Katie.
focus mostly on that first question, but I'll probably touch a little bit into the second about the students who are taking the courses. But yeah, I'm at the University of Arkansas, and I've been here for over 10 years. And for the entire time I've been here, we've required every one of our business students to take just a basic data analysis course. Shows up in their freshman year. It's pretty standard. They have to take it before they can get into any of their core courses of their major. But we're very fortunate at the University of Arkansas to have extremely generous donors from our corporate community when it comes to funding analytics and providing data. Our college is called the Walton College for Walmart. My accounting department is named Dillard for Dillards. So we have a lot of awesome data and a lot of funding to help advance our analytics coverage across the curriculum beyond just that core course in the freshman year. So our different individual majors have, over the past several years, been creating new classes that are outside of the information systems department to apply analytics and promote analytics across the different fields of business: accounting analytics, supply chain analytics, marketing analytics, and that sort of thing. In accounting in particular, we have an undergraduate accounting analytics course that is required for all of our undergrads who are accounting majors. That's in addition to our traditional accounting technology course, which is the database course, where they learn SQL and data management and normalization. We have a master's course for advanced analytics We even have a track to allow our students to focus on analytics and accounting. This is in addition to the more traditional tracks of tax or corporate or nonprofit. I mentioned those because I won't go into how every single department has these different courses, but we are seeing a lot more of these different specific courses pop up. And that helps build our minor in business analytics. So like many of the other programs we've just heard about, we do have a really successful minor in business analytics, and it draws from courses in the particular information systems department where they're going to learn just the absolute general application of data analysis. They'll learn database management, they'll learn data mining, they'll learn data visualization, and then they will be able to pick and choose among the different majors who offer accounting analytics, financial analytics, marketing analytics, just very much like what we just heard about, whatever suits the student the best. We have a business analytics certificate as well. It's really popular for students to add on and also popular among our professional community who don't want to necessarily commit to a master's program, but they want to advance those skills. But we also have a Master of Applied Business Analytics, 2 separate programs, one that's fully online. So that's for our professional community. And we have a traditional Masters of Applied Business Analytics program as well.
Thank you, Katie. So in terms of future, so I've definitely heard from all of you, the types of students, the types of courses, the types of majors, the types of programs. In terms of the change that you've seen around business analytics in the last 2 or 3 years, where do you see the course going in the future, and how do you see it growing? Can anyone speak to that? John?
Okay. Let's see. Well, students that I see now are mostly those that are already in the field, a lot that already have a degree, or both.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming to the community college to get mostly certificates. We've had the business analytics program for since 2017, so going on 4 years. And the majority of the students that we get are certificate students. I've only had 2 students that actually graduated with an associate's degree. They want to build their skill sets from what they already have at the community college level. So another thing that I do, let's see change in business in like 2 years. There hasn't been much change as far as that student demographic is concerned. But what I have done going into the future is to go ahead and start training with just R, because as we've seen in these summits, a lot of the universities and colleges are going with R, and it's being taught in some of the texts. So this is actually a good summit, and I think it would probably be worth the effort to sit around and watch the rest of this, see how other instructors are integrating R into their programs. But I think R is probably where it's at least to get students prepared for the next level. They're going into the university, maybe over at Janet's, where she's teaching R. If I can prepare them for that transition will be a lot smoother, to be a lot easier on them. But that's the future itself for business analytics. Maybe more of the large data, big data. If you're going more for big data analytics, I think we see a lot of the political climate and the coronavirus and all of that. People are questioning data that's coming out in the public, in the news and the media, and they want to see data for themselves. They kind of want to touch it. They want to make sure it's accurate. They want to kind of prove it. And so we're seeing that interest in that kind of thing. So that's where I see it going. And I think that's where our program is going to continue to go with R, and drilling down into big data is where I want to take them.
Do you ever see business statistics being replaced with business analytics?
I wouldn't say replaced. I'd say complement. I think a lot of my students that I get, some of them, it drives me crazy when they say it. When they go, I'm not a math person. I just want to punch somebody in the eye. But I think if they took a statistics course before starting into business analytics, it would be quite helpful for them. That's the direction they should take. So yeah, maybe business statistics first. Yeah, before they get into analytics. It's going to go hand in hand, but they should take something that challenges their critical thinking before they start pursuing any kind of education and business analytics.
Great. What about Patrick?
Well, thank you. I wanted to touch that question. If I ever do, I see business analytics courses taking over business statistics courses, and my hope is no. Mainly because there's so much foundational knowledge in there that we need to make sure students get before we can even start with the analytical part of it. So the collecting of data, the processing of data, the calculating of data, before we start into interpreting the data is very important. So I want to make sure that we make that if when we go into this realm, that the one course that we told our program directors is that Q&B needs to be a required course, much less for any program in terms of in business. As for business analytics and where this is going, I'm pretty excited about it. With just like my colleague was saying, with all the data that's been going out and the questioning of where this data come from and the quality of the data, it's exciting for a student or anyone who wants to get information to be able to drill down into the information, truly understand what it is and where it's coming from. Everything we do now is geared towards data and collection and personal information collection from the social media sites we go to, from the items we purchase off Amazon. Everything links to data analytics in one way or another. And being that business is one of the biggest programs in any university, it's only smart that we start to integrate that into our programs.
Thank you, Patrick. And how about you, Janet? I know you've seen a lot of change in business analytics in the last 2 or 3 years. So where do you see the future? And how do you see it growing? And do you see it replacing business statistics or other courses?
I think business data analytics is being recognized more and more as a really powerful subset within business in terms of harnessing all of this data that we're able to collect and store now that we weren't even able to collect and store 5 to 10 years ago. I have conversations with my husband all the time. His background is in computer science, about all of the things that we didn't have the opportunity to do while we were in school because the technology didn't exist. And I think a lot of students don't realize how new a lot of what it is we're dealing with and how new a lot of the technologies we're even teaching year to year. There are enormous changes in terms of packages available for things in R and Python year to year. I have to learn new things in Python, sometimes only a few weeks ahead of my students just to stay ahead of things. It's a constantly changing and emerging field because with the cheapness of data storage, the ease of collecting more data, there's just so much more to do. So I think the field is only going to grow, and I think it's going to be incorporated more in more and more departments. For example, our accounting department at WVU now has an area of emphasis in data analytics, and they use some of our data analytics minor courses in that area of emphasis. And not only is that area of emphasis present at the undergraduate level, but also in our Masters of Accountancy programs. And we're also seeing the need to introduce more students to coding sooner. Instead of waiting until they're juniors and seniors to get them into R, my experience at Chatham University is basically their very first semester in, we have to have them learning Python. And the ones that are in the data science program will then go on to learn R in the following semester. But if you are an MIS, immersive media, or data science, you're learning to code in semester 1. They don't have a computer science program. It's just so vital to be successful in the field, to understand how coding works, that we're now seeing coding becoming fundamental in programs in business and that are completely aside from computing, computer science, and MIS, because that is what is being demanded of us at the speed at which the technology is developing. I think there's going to come a point where it's going to be impossible to get a business degree without a solid foundation in business data analytics. Although I don't think that business analytics will ever entirely replace business statistics. I think business statistics will remain a core component of business analytics because just because you can code and you can parse through complex data problems doesn't necessarily mean that you know and understand the fundamental statistical techniques that you can do for initial investigation into problems. So I think the role of business statistics might change, but I think it's always going to be present and is absolutely fundamental for any student that is interested in pursuing data analytics, or any student in a program where data analytics becomes a required component.
Fantastic. Thanks, Janet. And how about you, Vic? So I feel like we're talking predictive now. Where do you see this course going in the future, and how do you see it growing, and or do you see it replacing any courses?
Well, what I'd like to do is, since I'd like to answer the question on, do you see business analytics courses ever entirely replacing business statistics, that I think Patrick and Janet briefly talked about. And I want to bring it in context with how statistics came about from math way back before Excel. And then before Excel, we used to work with this, using calculators and so on through Excel. And then we moved into a time when we had magical things like what we would call magical things, but Hans Rosling, when he came up with Gapminder and the motion-oriented graphics, I just posted the link to that. As we saw these areas, specialized statistics came out of math, and then we had major visualization errors, information error came out of that, and we saw statistics start to find its way into business in a bigger way. And then towards 2010, we had analytics start to come out of that, and analytics started to become more and more specialized. And then we had a few people start talking about where analytics is going. In fact, around that time, I wrote an article called Intelligent Information Systems, Quo Vadis, where are you going? Where is all of this taking us? So coming to this question, this is trying to answer the question, do you see business analytics courses ever entirely replacing statistics? So analytics has now kind of moved into occupying the space that implies business. And so when you say statistics, you are focusing more on how the math works and how these numbers come out. When you talk about analytics, my interpretation of that is the application side of the statistics, where you bring in the application sides and you bring in what's happening very, very quickly and how it needs to be applied. Now, what's happening in all of these spaces is newer things, newer capabilities are quickly developing. And there was a 2014 TED Talk by Philip Evans, and he kind of talked about that here. I'm going to post that right now here, when he starts to predict what's happening with the amount of data and the speed of data that's coming out. And he explains that there's so much, that resolution and the specialization in those spaces is growing so tremendously that we really need to spend and shift the focus a little bit towards the analytics side. Now, Patrick said, well, we don't want to forget how these things work. And he does have a point. But what we're trying to do is replace the heavyweight math, where someone really, really needs to understand how things need to be applied, without really losing touch on, well, what's maximum least squares estimation means. Briefly, we can't completely capture a student who would get there unless we are saying you're going to be a PhD in data science, therefore you can do all of these things. So in the bachelor's and master's programs, we have an attention span that we need to make sure that they get, and we can't completely fill that and pack that too hard. What they end up missing sometimes is, why are you using this analytical thing versus that? How does t-test make more sense over ANOVA? Or why would you do regression versus ANOVA? What's the difference? How would you do these? Where would you select these? So some of these case and application sides start to get dropped off if we start to stuff them too much. And this is leading me into the fourth question that you have on there. What change have you seen around business analytics in the last 2 or 3 years? with respect to how we are teaching them, with respect to how our educational systems and how our college is working with them. What are those changes? Well, when those changes have taken place in how we are teaching those courses. And this is because analytics has more or less been a very new course in our program. So we've learned a few lessons. One of the ways we started teaching analytics was we recorded videos and said, these are the techniques, this is how you would need to do this. And so students are watching it, would emulate those, click in the places the video told them to click, and run those things so that we actually teach the methodological pieces of that, so they know how to do that. So we stuffed our courses, as a result of that, we stuffed our courses with how do you do this? And what we tended to leave out, and this is the change that's taking place, what we tended to leave out, we realized, is very often students are trained like, click here, monkey see, monkey do, click here, click here, but how much thinking went into preparation or application of that method? How did you select that method? Why did you select it? When you get to the result, what does R-square actually mean? If you're supplying that, how is it important to the case that you were asked to do? So those pieces are things that are very realistic. When you finish a course in our college and you go out to the industry, things are not as clinically cut and dry as they were in your course. So the professor knew that this is supposed to be a cleaned up data set, but in nothing at all is going to be that clean. So where do you teach that? And that question is what caused me to come up in the last 2 years with a course that teaches the why. And I looked around for about a few months to see which other university was teaching the why course. I have no analytics in my course. The only thing I teach in my course is the strategic use of analytics. So yes, they do see the data, but they don't run any analytics. Those are the pieces that they've been missing. Why did you use this analysis? Or how do you interpret this? I call it the why course. And that's one of those changes that we brought. And the other is, of course, we are strengthening the preparation for the students within the methodological courses as well, because sometimes people are not thinking hard enough and they don't even pick up necessarily all the methodological pieces. So we kind of need them to think a little bit more. We're trying to innovate in that area.
Vic, in the same vein, I was asked privately a question about hearing programming and software, but what about data mining and everyday data retrieval from massive databases and using tools like Access? Is that do you do that in that course in the why?
We do data mining in our course. We do teach still things that are easier to teach. We believe that Microsoft SQL Server is harder to teach because it needs an environment that is super strenuous to maintain in comparison with Access. So we have been having this discussion in our institution about Access versus Microsoft SQL Server. What do you want to do? Well, Microsoft SQL Server or one of the open source database courses are more realistic because that's what industry uses. However, we spend so much time in getting to learn and work with these systems in comparison with Access that one of our faculty members is now toying with the regression back to Access so they can actually get moving on the SQL. You really want to say, well, you need to go into advanced SQL. We can actually deliver and train students with advanced SQL. And so that experiment is currently ongoing in our institution that says, well, let me regress to SQL from the SQL Server, just back up a little bit so that we can teach them SQL and get them on the ground with the thing that that person intended to get those students to learn. And that kind of worked so far, but we are still having discussions around that. Do we want to keep Access? The data mining piece, we certainly do want to teach. We are teaching that in our predictive course. It is a small component, and we have recently switched our predictive course from an Excel minor in Microsoft Excel into a Python course. So that data mining now has become a little harder because Python is so much free form. You can go anywhere with that. So that's a recent change that has taken place over the last year in our institution.
Great, thank you so much for sharing that. Katie, sorry about that. I didn't mean to throw in that other question, but again, just getting back to the question about how much change have you seen around business analytics in the last 2 or 3 years? and then where you see this going in the future, or do you see it growing, and then do you see it replacing any courses?
Yeah, awesome. Vic, I love the why course. I love that. I do a lot of teaching of the why as well, but I do agree that it could have an entire semester of its own because there's so much to it. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to kind of touch on, I think, all three of these questions, even the student one, even though you didn't ask me to. I think I'm going to bring that in a little bit. I love what Janet mentioned about having so many new amazing tools available to us now. And we have got to keep up with the profession. We have got to keep up with professionals. Now, I teach in our general data analytics and data business analytics program, and I also teach in our accounting program. And so I'll just speak for accounting. If there are any accounting faculty out there, we are constantly at risk of falling dreadfully behind the profession, where the profession itself even falls behind industry-wide business analytics advances. So it's really, really important that we do consider where business analytics, how it should grow. Should it be in addition to business statistics, and should we start having these why courses and that sort of thing? Because there's just more now than there was before. So 10 years ago, when I started teaching a required data class or a required tech class, required being the operative word, someone opts in, you don't have to convince them anything. But if it was required, I would spend an entire session, one class session, an entire day, convincing them why they needed to learn it. I don't need to do that class anymore. That session, out the window. These students are bought in. I mean, you'll always have some students who aren't, because that's life. But for the most part, the vast majority of my students, they might come in saying, like John said, oh, I'm not a math person. And it's like, no, never say that again. We don't say that. We don't say that. You just don't need to learn it. We're going to learn it. It's okay. But they're bought in. They know it's meaningful. So, and again, kind of to reference something Janet said earlier, they're so bought in that they don't even realize it's new. Some of the tools that we're teaching them, when I'm teaching them how to, in our database class, we're teaching them how to advance from a legacy system to a relational database. They don't even understand why the old system existed. Well, we didn't have the technology yet, guys. That's why. So they're really, really ready. So am I surprised about the types of students taking these courses? Only sort of. The students I worked with previously who would opt into elective systems and analytics courses, they were kids who were going to be information systems professionals. That was what was going to happen. They didn't know they wanted that, so they took a required course and then they're like, that's it for me. Now, it is not just that, because every field is an information systems field. Every field is a data analytics field now. It's just where we are. We must be using all of this tremendous amount of data, and there's that curiosity there. People want to. So anyway, that's kind of answering some of those. So as far as stats versus analytics, I think that's really tough, because I agree with what the rest of the panel said. We cannot rid our students of learning basic stats. They need to learn that. But at the same time, they typically get introduced to it, like at the U of A, their freshman year. And like Vic said, they have no idea why they're doing it. They run a t-test, they write it out, and boop, 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 boop. They see a p-value and an alpha, and they say, I reject the null or fail to reject the null. And they don't know what that means. They still need to learn it then, I suppose, because you've got to have some foundation to build upon when you actually get into the analytics course. But we've got to start adding in that additional course, or even sets of courses that we've heard about from the panel, to help these students understand the why, apply those, that get past that manual construction of statistical tests and get into more applied studies, sure, with traditional stats sometimes, but build in a lot more data visualization, build in a lot more of how to communicate the results, both with words and data visualization, and the why. Come up with the right question. What questions can we answer? How do we get the right data to answer that question? This is getting increasingly important, and our students are really interested in it. So I think I just basically agree with the panel. We've got to infuse more. There's got to be more, not necessarily a replacement.
I love it, Katie. And your what you just talked about, as well as what the panel's been talking about, there was a couple of questions that I think that what you just said and the whole idea of the why was answered. One specific question that I just received, and I don't know if any of you have used or can speak to this, but the question was, what is the difference between using statistical econometric software such as Stata and eViews versus data analytics programs such as R and Python. Can anyone address that or have any experience with any of those software or have any comments in terms of
I mean, I'll jump in and just quickly say, I think depending on what type of students you're teaching, what their future profession is going to be, is going to really help guide which tool you want to use. Using traditional econometrics, it's a tough word for me to say, tools that's going to be, in my experience, of course, you know where I am, I'm in Arkansas, we're in the South, so maybe it's a little bit different on the coasts, but we're not going to see in our general marketing, finance, accounting departments, them using tools like Stata or, right, this is not going to be happening. R, Python, another great advantage, open source, free. So when they get into their profession, as long as they can work with their information systems department to be allowed to download R and Python and use it with their system data, they're going to have access to it.
Do you feel like both software can do similar final products or
You can do way more with R and Python.
okay.
And whatever you can't do in R and Python, you can find a coder who can make it happen because it's all open source. You can create a new package that can do anything you want.
Okay. Out of curiosity, because R and Python, you're both very familiar with R and Python. Has anyone yet used something that I just learned about, Julia? No?
Juliet.
I don't use it.
It's called Julia.
Julius. No.
Like Julia.
Oh.
No. One of the presenters who I had seen his presentation mentioned Julia. He thinks will take over R and Python. So I thought it was interesting, and I just wondered if any of you had heard that one before. So that's a no. So another comment was about data analytics is not programming. It is a thought process and understanding how to pull and analyze data. Is a comment.
And that's why business statistics will always have a place in data analytics, because data analytics is not inherently the math and the computation. It's a thought process. So that's why, in my opinion, business statistics is always going to have an important place and a home in data analytics. So I like that comment.
Okay, I'm just
I would step back to that, the Julia. I haven't heard of it. Nobody else seems to have heard of it either. But when we teach R and Python, those are more accepted in the field, as far as I know. And if the universities teach them, I want to be sure that I'm preparing those students for that, and that they have tools with them that they can take out to any workforce. So I think R and Python are the way to go, especially I think it was Katie was talking about how some students find that they like this programming stuff. They end up going into a different path. But that's probably why no one's heard of Julia on this panel.
Yeah, so the person that mentioned it will be one of the employability talks. So that was something that he mentioned from industry. So that's why I wondered if it was interesting talk.
Is there a particular company or companies that use Julia that we know of?
Not that I'm aware of, but I'm sure we can ask him that on the next session.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious if it was, because he does talk about academia versus industry, and one of the things I think Julia will end up taking over all of the other software. So I thought that was an interesting comment, but we'll get to that when his session comes up.
We'll look it up for sure.
Yeah. Fantastic.
I saw a comment just to kind of piggyback on that, and a comment in the chat about R versus Python in general. Teach them a language, at least. And I know, Janet, you said you teach both of them. I think that is fantastic. I teach Python because I'm personally more comfortable with Python. I think a lot of us end up teaching what we are personally most comfortable with. And as long as it's still relevant, I think that's okay. But you teach them something, because if we teach them R or Python, and then Julia does come in to replace R or Python, these students will know how to program. They will not all of a sudden, they will at least enter it knowing how to use something other than a mouse, other than point and click. That's really part of the goal. And thinking about data analytics as a thought process, so is coding. It's problem solving. There's never only one line of code or one package or even one language that's going to solve every problem. You have choices. Learn it all, get in there and figure out which tool you like the best.
One of those things we do in our school is we adopt one language and then try to capitalize on that to get the students to be capable of deeper thinking in a programming language, so that we've had this discussion where we wanted to teach either, should we have both of them going into the course? And we did try that. And we spent a little time getting the students to learn the grammar of those languages. And therefore, the depth achieved in one single language, where they learned the language in one course and then they applied it towards predictive in a different course, allowed them to leverage and achieve greater accomplishments by not having to relearn grammar or doing anything with, tripping over those basic things. Oh, you did not import the package, that kind of thing. They were able to just go a little further and come up with more heavier data mining or neural network that they built themselves due to the free-form nature that they were now able to just wield and then have more power in. So that kind of peed us back a little bit. And I still like that. I still know that there's benefit in teaching both, but perhaps that's a discussion that we need to keep thinking about.
Excellent. I do not see any other questions. Hold on. Asking about recordings. Vic, someone wants your syllabus and a few sample lectures. So it sounds like the Y course is catching on.
Happy to share that.
Yeah, they'd love to see your syllabus of the Y course and a few sample lectures. So decision-making need to be incorporated into all courses. Okay, analytics and decision-making need to be incorporated into all courses, accounting, finance, etc. If not, you will continue to hinder critical thinking skills and put the topics into a silo. Very true. Free and open source is the way to go. And then thank you, Janet, for entering Julia programming language information. And then Vic, what were the, because we will share these afterwards, the links, the YouTube links that you provided. I think you had two of them here. I don't know if they were the same one. But
they were different ones. One was Hans Rosling. And when Hans Rosling made this TED Talk, that turned out to be one of the most popular TED Talks of the late 2000 years. And it was, in fact, the best graphics I'd ever seen at that point when I did see that. The other one is a really nice talk. I absolutely love that talk, and I use this in my strategy course, the Y course, where I'm helping students understand how analytics plays a huge role in strategy and why we need to understand the other pieces around analytics. So that's actually directly out of my course, where I start the course and I give them that lecture and I say, you all understand Porter's value chain and so on, a few pieces like that. And then Philip Evans does a very, very good job of explaining where it's going because of what data is doing to business. And so he predicted, this is 2014, but it's still relevant in how he thinks. So that's the second one, is Philip Evans, 2014. I believe it's also a TED Talk. It's a fantastic one. It's very directly business. and really nails the essence of the Y course. So whoever had asked that question, perhaps, and I'll share, of course, my some of my sample lectures and my syllabus with them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Vic. I think a lot of you. Yes, go ahead.
I think there's a question about SAS. I don't know if we were able to address that one. Anybody on our panelists have an opinion or something how you use SAS?
I did.
Yeah, so SAS, data, SPSS are all extraordinarily expensive, and I think that they are still commonly used in their domain areas like psychology, sociology, but in data science and data analytics as a field, we're moving towards what's free and open source. I know for me, I went through grad school using Stata, and then I had horrible sticker shock when I saw how much a Stata license cost. And I immediately taught myself R because it was free and open source. And in our effort to try to reduce the costs of attending school and to ensure that we're giving our students tools that they can continue to use and practice with when they graduate without dropping $1,000+ on a license, I think we're really moving heavily into what is free and open source, because it's for the students that really do get into it. Like, I have some students that are in my Python class right now, and they are so into it. And it would really be a disappointment for them if after the class and after they were done in school, they would lose access to their tools without a lot of money.
Makes sense. Yeah, thank you, Janet.
In our institution, if I may, it was in our institution, we taught SAS, but there were too many problems with students getting it set up on their system. You'd spend more time trying to get them set up with SAS than they were actually learning it. So that became a problem. And then SAS started changing things, and I know that I saw a comment where there might be phasing out. So we had gone from SAS and went to Tableau instead, which was more robust, and students liked that a lot. And I also taught them Click because part of my background was in healthcare, so I thought it would be good for them in the field. But ultimately, we ended up going with R because, like Janet said, it was open source, and other universities are teaching it, and from what I hear, it's a good transition to Python, or the other way around, as it seems in the comments. So that's our experience with it.
Cool. Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, that's great. I wanted to, in case anyone's not reading the chat, I just wanted to, someone asked about speaking to the differences between Python and R, which John just mentioned. But one thing that Janet did say was that she teaches both, and she thinks Python has more applications outside of data analytics, which is why it's popular as an intro language for first-year students. And once you know Python, it isn't hard to pick up R. And that seems to be I think in terms of, knowing a language and then being able to sort of use the same resources to learn a different language is kind of key for students. Another question, should data analytics be limited to a data analytics department or program? Data is important to all fields, so shouldn't data analytics be taught in social sciences and other majors?
Yes. It should not be limited to the data analysis department, or in my school, it's the information systems department is what it's still called. It should not be limited just there. That department is still absolutely important, very critical. I'm grateful for them and everything they do. I'm grateful for the students they put out into the world. They do, speaking back to SAS, they teach loads of SAS in the information systems classes. I think they should, because where those students are going to go working in the field, they're probably going to have access to those robust programs. But absolutely 100%, the data analysis needs to be taught, not even just in classes called financial data analytics, humanities data analytics, healthcare data analytics, but literally every single class. Give me a literature class, I'll tell you how to put analytics into it. We should have it everywhere. I completely agree.
Love it.
Analytics has really come a long way in the past couple of years. Like, I've done a lot of research recently looking at people's sentiment in how they use different hashtags on Twitter. So I am right there with Katie. Like, you can do so much, even in literature and English and sociology with this stuff. Like, it might not seem intuitive, but it is so powerful. It is truly amazing. And I think this also ties back to how so many of our programs have minors, because what we're really offering is a set of tools that you can take into literally any discipline. And I think that's really exciting. That's one of the things that I love most about teaching in this field, is that I get to meet with and work with people from all kinds of backgrounds, because what we're really offering is a set of tools that you can take anywhere.
So knowing that there might be a little bit of bias on this call, which is okay, it's great for us to be excited about this. I'm curious, what have you guys heard as some of the motivating and the main reasons that's maybe slowing down some of that, other than just, we know that these are large institutions, right? You can't just turn on a course, you can't change course objectives in a couple weeks or a month, that can take years. So other than just the system that's slower, what are some of the reasons that, again, might compel people to not incorporate that? Because I think there's a lot of participants, right, who may need to understand that perspective to perhaps overcome that and really get that incorporated. So what are the dissenting views on that?
I'll take a crack at it. A few things that I think we on my college that we're having issues with is justifying, much like my other colleagues, why students need to take these business analytic courses. Students are not often, business students, whether you study in business or you study nursing. We just stated that there's going to be analytics and everything, but students don't necessarily want to study the R or study Python or any type of computer programming. So that hurdle is becoming increasingly difficult, and it's even more so difficult when we bring it to faculty, because our faculty haven't taken it at all. So to try to convince them of why this is important for the students, you got to get through that hurdle. And then, of course, administration may see the trends because they notice enrollment may be increasing in certain areas in another institution, but faculty don't look for that data, don't care for that data. So to kind of work with them to say, hey, this is important, and it's not something where I'm trying to take students away from you, or I'm trying to put students into computer engineering. I'm just trying to strengthen the students overall. And that's an issue that I think we're, at least in my institution, we're facing.
I think that's a really great point, Patrick. The other issue I run into is people telling me that they're not math people and they don't really understand that data analytics is so much more than the math. Well, when they went through their educational institutions and they earned their stripes and their right to be in academia, the math was a lot different. We couldn't do it as much on computers as we do today. I mean, I remember having to do regression literally by hand on a lined sheet of paper. Simple linear regression, I might add, or matrix algebra on pen and paper. And that's not how it has to be anymore. And you can discuss the concepts and understand the outputs without actually having to manually go through and do everything by hand anymore. And I think people outside of the discipline aren't necessarily as aware of how advanced the tools are for helping support practitioners in performing the statistical and mathematical functions within data analytics. And I think they also tend to think of data analytics purely as a statistical and mathematical based field, when I think it's been established by my fellow panelists that it's really more of a way of thinking as opposed to brute force mathematics and statistics.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to that. I think there's also perhaps, and I have actually been corrected by a faculty member. Corrected is a gentle way to say what what occurred when I went on a similar rant to my fellow faculty members and said, I need you guys teaching data analytics in all of your classes. And of course, the very first barrier is time. That's always going to be the first barrier. Okay, so I recognize that. So I'm like, okay, just take one of your lessons and like make it analytics though. I mean, I'm not, but then this particular professor teaches tax, and this is a genre that are a little bit more resistant to analytics than many other genres that I work around. And she said, okay, I think my problem is you want me to teach what you teach. Are you teaching tax in your room? And I was like, well, no, but I figured out the problem. I don't want you to teach what I teach. I don't want you to teach a tax analytics class. I want you to teach tax. I want to teach whatever it is you're supposed to teach. I'm teaching them analytics, how to use Python, what a regression is, when they want a t-test versus a regression, when it's time to just do exploratory analysis and Tableau. I got your back there. You don't have to teach them that. Trust that they know it and give them an assignment to apply it. So we just need it sprinkled throughout. So I think that might be part of the language of it needs to be taught everywhere. Does sound like we're pushing some of our jobs off on other classes. No, we'll teach it. It's cool. But it needs to be applied everywhere. That might be a better way to say it. And sorry, I know I'm talking way too much of this, but I am very excited. Another issue is particularly so to faculty who are on this call, whether you're interested in starting a new analytics class or you teach a class that's not analytics and you just want to bring some in or whatever that might be. If you're teaching new tools, you're teaching exploratory analysis in Tableau, Power BI, with Python, with R, your students will do something that surprises you and you will not know what it is. You will have to say, I don't know. And that's not something we're very comfortable with. But if you tell them, you know what, guys, today we're going to learn something that's new. It's new to me. It's new to you. I might crash and burn, but let's jump in because that's what learning is. It's a whole new ball game for those of us who have been teaching out of a lecture book for 10 years. But got to change that mindset.
It's called togetherness learning.
That's so true though, because I was administering a test in my Python class yesterday and everyone had finished except for one student and he was having a really difficult time getting a function to work in Python. We were using Jupyter notebooks and for some reason it was being really buggy and eventually we were just sitting side by side spitballing new ideas to make this function work. And I had to explain to him that when you're learning a new programming language and there's a million ways to do things, I don't know all of those million ways to do things. I might know 5 or 6, but when it comes down to it, there are definitely more things I don't know than I do know, and that, well, I can give you the foundations. You might surprise me some days, and that's not a bad thing.
Those are really good points. Thank you for sharing those.
So it sounds like there is definitely a challenge between departments when it comes to analytics as well.
What we have done is we've outsourced our capstone courses to different departments. So sometimes accounting wants to teach analytics, HR, health sciences analytics, and marketing analytics. And then people who just want to take an analytics capstone will take an advanced course in Python. So we're able to kind of bring in those specializations, if you will, in those specific areas. Financial analytics wants to teach that, they can go ahead and create a course that can become a capstone for our analytics minor. And that model kind of has worked whenever someone is available, or if the department that we are sending this off to, let's say health sciences in a different college, and they are happy to come in and create a capstone for us. And that model has worked a little bit. It's not much. We don't get that many students for something like that because this is an idea that has just started out and it's still branching and collecting a little bit more momentum. But it kind of goes back to your question about should other areas start also bringing analytics in? And of course, this is one way to make that happen.
Yeah, one of our attendees from a public liberal arts college mentioned that their data analytics minor is designed to be open to all majors as an interdisciplinary minor at this liberal arts college.
And that's the case with our university as well. And that's what the minor is doing. It's allowing everyone in the university to declare analytics, business analytics as a minor, and then go back to their home department for the capstone.
we're actually working on an interdisciplinary data analytics major as well. It's in process, it's not out there yet, but there's enough classes around the university that it can be cobbled together. We're just trying to make sure we do it well, but that kind of does go in line with that. This does not need to be confined not only to the data analytics department, but it shouldn't be confined to business either.
It sounds pretty complicated, but that's awesome.
All right, I think that we have hit on all of the questions. I'm going to throw out the last chance. Does anyone have any other questions for the panelists? Our next session that starts at 11:30 is Brian Hart from Catapult Sports. He's a data scientist, and he is the one that mentioned Julia, so I'm sure there will be questions on Julia as well. But he is going to be talking about sort of more the industry side, but he does get into a lot of academia as well. So an interesting session. Okay, just looking to see if there's any other questions. All right, I think you all did a fantastic job today answering some complicated areas and complicated questions. And I love all the excitement that you have brought today. Thank you, panelists. It's been really, really a great session. I think that we can now take about 15 minutes until the 11:30 session with Brian Hart. But I just wanted to give a big thanks to all of you for participating today.